This is just a brief history. It's not a long history, but a very brief history of recent funding. And as you will see, as you look at the city's report, that funding has remained static over the last few years. It has changed last year for the parish, and actually it was as a result of a discussion we had with them about retaining fees, and so they calculated what they thought that difference was and did increase that amount. And you'll also see a large difference in the fees received, and that's primarily due to, at the end of 15, we had a revision in the fee structure that was an amendment that was in anticipation of several things, but one of the major thing was the UDC and the loss of revenue. That would you see the UDC, and actually you see that shown in this chart here, where that loss of revenues already began to manifest itself. The first approach to analysis is the direct cost approach, and what this does is it takes all the service data the services that are being done right now, and analyzes how much is happening in the city, how much is happening in the parish, and then kind of use that as a good indicator of where we're going to move forward. So this particular slide talks about, how many cases we had, the different types of cases, and how they're divided jurisdictionally. And then, as you'll see, some are high, some are low, but when they balance out at the bottom, they're at 10.2%. But that's only a part of the story. There's another thing that does not appear in your budget whatsoever, and that is the in-kind of amounts that are given by both the city of Shreveport and the parish of Caddo. And from the standpoint of the city, you have a fairly large amount of funds that again, we're not actually billed for them, they're not actually charged to us, but they do occur, which is we have HR, IT, the finance department, many other departments that work with us because they're a fiscal agent that we're not paying directly for. If we were completely independent, we may be paying an accountant to do books for us. We may be paying an IT service to do our IT networking and things of that nature. We're not doing that now, so those had to be calculated. And also, we do not pay rent or utilities or for our parking, so that's also indicated here. And so when you add all that together, then you do see the difference, which is the 210,706 figure. So when you take what I just showed you a moment ago, and you factor in that there is a difference because of the in-kind services, then those figures are adjusted to where it's 77% versus the 23%. So that's just part of the story. There's a second approach to the analysis, is the budget analysis of the parish. And what this does is it analyzes what's happening with the funds that are going, it's actually two different parts, but it analyzes what's happening in the city, and then it's also what's happening parish-wide. And so it's taking a proration of those level of services to the parish and using that as a proxy for the amount of level of service for the MPC. So this started with analysis of the population and jobs, and looking at the differences between the two of those, and then taking that data and then using this methodology, which is just using those demographics from the previous slide to go through that budget and see how much of these are actually in the service. One of the things that I didn't point out that was in one of the slides was, one of the things you got to understand, that 100% of the city is in the parish. So there are funds being expended in the city on the behalf of the parish, and so that's reflected in this budget analysis. And so I'm going to give you the findings of that one in just a moment, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you we already talked about the findings of the first study was 77 and 23. But if you look at this one, then you've got which is the second approach, is 74.3 versus 25.7. So that's one that you look at, that it gets adjusted. So now we have two different amounts. So what do you do with that? So if you look at the way that these pan out right now. If you were to, what the Tischler Buy said, probably the best thing to do is go ahead and just use an average of the two. So that's when you get the 75.65 versus the 25.35. So this is the actual funding recommendation. Again, now you see this higher number where the city of Shreveport actually is taking 86.8% because those fees are actually, that's reflected in the user fees, actually is their money. So you get 86.8 versus the 13.2. What's being proposed is that the city of Shreveport funding be adjusted to 75.65 and the parish of Caddo funding be 24.35. So how would that play out in the actual 2018 budget? You would have of course the user fees would stay the same, and then the Caddo Parish contribution would be adjusted upwards to the 402, 481 figure, and then the city operating subsidy would be reduced to 898, 519. Well, there's also more than this study was going to be doing. Is also going to look at the financial structure. And when we give you the actual detailed report, it will go into much more detail of what the recommendations are. One of the prime recommendations is that we have two different fee schedules. And I explained earlier that that this goes back many years. This goes back to, I believe, probably somewhere around 2000, maybe 8 or so. There was a fairly significant adjustment in the fees for the city, and the parish chose at that time not to increase. Then we had another amendment that was really geared towards the UDC, and that has yet to be presented to the parish. So there is a great disparity between those two fee schedules. In the study, it actually goes through in more detail explaining what those differences are. But it can be a significant amount of money. So what could happen is the parish could rethink their policy of allowing us to keep the fees and go ahead and let us do that, and then thus it would reduce the amount of subsidy they would actually have to pay if they did that. This also would have some effect on land use. From the standpoint, it gives more incentive for people it makes it an even playing field, that you're not getting a break by going out of the parish. You get actually the same as you are in the city. In addition, Tischler Buy recommends that the MPC explore some additional user fees. And one example of that, and the study goes into, is a technology fee might be a potential to actually charge, because there is a significant cost associated with technology. And there may be some other user fees that may be appropriate to adopt to kind of help generate additional funds and to lessen that dependency on the two governing bodies to direct fund program. And then another one it could have a extremely significant impact would be looking at the ERS system right now. The employer share that is paid is reflected in our budget is 22%. It's going to 24% next year. There is a because we are partially funded by the parish, we are potentially eligible to participate in the parochial employees retirement system, which is also called PERS. And their employment, they actually have two tiers. The one that that is more like what we do is actually the employer contribution is now set in 17 at 12.5%. So you can see that is a significant amount of money that could be passed on in savings to both the parish and the city, and potentially for us to even have some more funds to do other things with if that was acceptable through the budget process. This kind of gives you an idea. This chart really kind of shows you how the escalating costs of retirement programs have happened through the years, and so you can see you've gone up 7% in the last 9 years. And this final slide basically is just telling you what PERS is. I've kind of explained that already, and then that they are authorized through state statute to provide benefits to employees or for entities that received at least partial funding from the parishes. And so that concludes my report.
Three things I want to bring to your attention. Number one, and it may have been already mentioned when I was out of the room, is that we've already proactively asked the parish to, as they've done in the past, about funding our vehicles, and all three of our vehicles for the inspections and for zoning enforcement are outdated. And so we have already officially submitted a request for a replacement of a vehicle at least once for every year, so that in 3 years we'd have new vehicles. They also, for the first time, because of this study, they asked us to make a formal request to them before the study was actually finished. Ironically, and you may have mentioned this already if I am repeating myself, we came up with the 25%, that's what we asked for, not knowing what the results are going to be. And the reason we did that was because when the master plan was funded between the city and the parish paid 25% of the cost. When the contract was signed with Camaros for the UDC, once again, the parish paid 25% of the cost. So we used that as our bench point. And strangely enough, it almost is exactly what the outcome of the study is showing. Now, having said that, we have already made a formal request for them to increase their funding up to 25%. We'll see where that goes, but we've already made the formal ask, and that's important to know. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is about the ERS. The way this would work would be this. We cannot get out of ERS. ERS is locked in. I'm in ERS, several of our other employees, we have to stay in, don't have the option to migrate out. But what we would do is say, if we could do legislative changes to our arrangements with the city and with the parish, would be to say all new employees coming on board after this particular date and time would have an option of either like deferred comp or PERS, but we would have no option for ERS. So over a period of many years, we would finally wean ourselves off of ERS and the PERS, which would save us a lot of money, because remember, ERS is going to go up to 30% in 2021. That's a massive amount of funding going to the retirement program. And basically, it just sucks the marrow out of our organization. Because every year, it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and then it stops at 30%. But if we went to the PERS with our new employees, that rate has actually been going down, and it's 12.5%. So that's a long-term view, but that's how that would actually be able to accomplish that goal, would be to do that. So we've looked at every element here that we think within the confines of what we could do with this study to come up with something that we think is workable. I will repeat what our chair said at our lunch meeting. He says, just because we have a study is not a panacea, and he is absolutely correct. The reality is, a study is a study, but at least we have our numbers and our facts in order. And so what we plan to do is when we send a copy of this report to each and every one of you in the next week, we plan to send a copy to every city council member, the mayor, the CAO, all the parish commissioners, and the parish administrator, to make certain that everyone gets a copy of this report. It will be very important because it will become a fundamental negotiating point with the city council when we meet with them in November. And it will have a fundamental effect on what the parish ultimately does with our budget. Can I guarantee you that the parish will give us unconditional money? I cannot. But can I say that we have done a yeoman's effort to ask and put facts behind what we requested? Yes, I can. This is not based on emotions, it's based on the facts. Right. And if people want to deny that or tear it apart, that's their privilege. But we will stand on what the factual data and information has shown us. We feel very confident about what we've come to, and we feel like this will make a difference, considering the fact this kind of a study has never been done before in the history of this organization. And that's why it's so fundamentally important. So if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them at this time.
One quick one, Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Young.
Thank you, sir. You've requested one vehicle per year, and then the study says that there needs to be a fundamental change about funding. How are you factoring that in if they decide to do the 75-25% funding? Because is the parish going to pull back on the vehicle? Because you're talking about that's basic funding.
No,
you're just reapportioning basic funding.
We're keeping that into the formula.
Okay.
So we're still allowing, that was their in-kind contribution to us. But you can see what a complete imbalance there is. The in-kind contribution from the city is so much greater than what we're getting from the parish, that it's great that we're getting vehicles from them, but
Yeah, I just didn't want the mix to come out, and I said, okay, you're going to get 75-25, but then we're short 3 vehicles over the next 3
well,
years.
we kept the in-kind in there.
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any other questions with reference to, excuse me, the financial sustainability study? All right, not, next we'll have an overview and explanation of the Red River Overlay District. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess Mr. Remedies has stepped out, but Mr. Young, you have the memo. I passed that out.
Yes.
At lunch, this presentation briefly describes that memo. So there'll be,
In deference to everybody else that was able to make it, and I wasn't, I don't want to, I'll just make a time to come meet with y'all and one of y'all, and just, we can do it then if necessary. I don't want to belabor this.
Well, we're
thing.
voting on something.
Oh, we're voting on it?
No,
Just discussion today.
no, it's just discussion.
I just don't want to,
I
I just,
mean, if-
if you're
that's
okay, I'll meet with you one day next week or something like that, and we'll do a
Well, if
one-on-one.
that's okay with Mr. Young, the rest of us have had the benefit of the
Yes,
presentation.
y'all have, and so that's why I don't want to delay the meeting out.
All right.
About the other two that I guess aren't here.
I'll make sure
I'll
there's-
let them know that they can meet with Mr. Bailey if they're happy, okay? They're not here.
Right.
It's a good
But I
presentation
will say
for-
that
It's
one.
worth
I
the
don't
time.
mind hearing it again.
Oh, no.
I'm just trying to be courteous
I
to
will
everyone.
say that.
That's what, we do have a member of the.
Mrs. Prater has asked to speak at this moment, so we should
Maybe
at
she
least
wants
do
to hear.
that.
Right,
So
okay.
that's one of the things she has asked for, so, yes, sir.
In reference to this issue,
Yes, sir.
did we not say that that property was not in the overlay?
We did.
She still has a right to
But she
hear.
still, if she wishes to talk about it, she had asked, and that's all so.
And also, if we do change the standard measurement guideline,
We
is that
didn't,
called
we were
this?
talking about.
The
If that were
boundary.
to be amended,
well, that would not come into before you until at least
right,
November.
Okay.
right.
I'd
I'm just-
have to advertise for that.
Right, I'm just saying that might affect whose property falls in it.
Right.
All right, Carol.
I'm Carolyn Prater, 2909 Moss Point, and no, I just came because I was interested, following our last meeting, in finding out about the Red River Overlay District, and I talked to Mr. Jean this morning, and he said there was a presentation today that I didn't need to come to the work session to hear it. I could hear it now. So,
And you
that's
share.
why
Yes.
I sat through
Right.
all of your
In that case, we'll.
financial.
Hang in
But I will be just as happy to come and sit down with you, and you can go over it with me, if y'all have already gone over it. So that's,
It's good, I'd like to hear it again. I mean, it's a good presentation, and it's not very long. It's not very
So
long.
she'll call you and you can go get it.
you can come to the
It
meeting
sounds like I
with,
got a quorum for the meeting.
Mrs. Prater, it's
Mrs.
up to
Prater,
you.
it's up to you.
Whatever
If
you
you
like.
want to come and visit
here
with
to
us on
serve
it, we
you.
can.
yeah, that's fine. I'll just come, and
Okay.
if everybody else
How
has.
about this? I give you the memo, and then that way, when you come,
We can ask
we
questions.
can have stuff to.
I know, I feel
stayed.
glad that she stayed the whole meeting.
Yes,
And I'm-
Oh, no, that was fascinating.
okay.
We like to hear our meetings are fascinating from the public.
Sarcasm.
Yeah, sometimes our meetings are like fingernails on a chalkboard.
You can get,
Yeah, I'll get with you.
Yeah,
I just
same
don't want to
way.
belabor the moment,
right,
so.
you can go
Right.
over.
No, I'll just meet
Okay.
with you, and so y'all don't have to review it.
All right. Thank you very much,
Gracious,
ma'am.
thank you.
Okay, well, we saved a little bit of time, but just for the record, we did go over this at the lunch meeting, and we'll follow up whoever else wants to sit down with us, including Mrs. Prater, Alan, Ronnie, Dale, and.
I just want to say that both Stephen and Adam did an exceptional
and that was a
job
lot of
They
work.
did.
of researching it, putting it concise, educating the board members that attended, and I appreciate that.
And the PowerPoint was
The
really
PowerPoint
well
was
done.
great.
Well, thank you, and
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel as though I have a good staff, and
You do.
they need to be complimented on what they do for us.
Well done.
I couldn't, I wouldn't be successful at what I do if it weren't for them, to be honest with you.
still have other business.
Yeah, there's
Go
still-
ahead.
All right, the other
We're
business.
still
you
on
ready?
the item 22, other business, the master plan implementation report.
Yes, I just want to mention that the Parish Commission formally adopted the UDC with the amendments you recommended at September the 21st. It will go into implementation. Effective date will be December the 1st. The document is about 99.5% the same with a few tweaks, the ones that y'all saw when you approved those amendments. They have also incorporated and went ahead and said they want a 2-year policy, just like the city council has and like we have, that says that if someone's property was downzoned, that they have an opportunity for within that 2-year period up until December 1st of 2019 to be able to make those adjustments without any cost to the applicant. So they were fully on board with that idea and thought it was a good policy that the MPC originated, and we feel like it's an effective way to address any concerns that somebody might have about any possible downzones. And as you can see on today's agenda, we had 6 cases automatically that got up to you, and so we'll continue to do that and continue to publicize that opportunity to the public. The only other thing I want to mention is, under future discussion items, is that we're at a stage now, I know that Nancy is in the process of reviewing the amended bylaws. We have a draft that we have provided to her based on other bylaws from other organizations. And what we will need to do, and she's already aware of this, is she'll need to call a meeting of that subcommittee on policies and procedures, and we will convene as soon as we can find a good time, and we'll notify everybody of that. And we try to make it easy because we went through and kind of did some of the homework ahead of time. Adam and I worked on that extensively, and so we have kind of a conceptual idea of what we'd like to do, but we want to make certain that the committee is on board with it and feels comfortable to make those recommendations. So we'd like to come back to you with that as soon, before the end of the year if we can. And then I will tell you, I already have a draft of new personnel policies ready for you to consider, and we'll have to go through that committee. And I hope to get that to you in the first part of 2018. By the time we get through, we will have changed every document and policy in the organization.
It needed it.
Oh yeah, 30 years overdue. So anyway, so we're gonna get there, guys. It's been a challenge, but we're getting there. So chipping away at it. That's all I have.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Items for future discussions. Let me just say, Chair and board member comments at this point. I want to, we need to appoint a nominating committee. I don't know what I did with my paper.
Next year's.
Did I get it?
Oh, yeah.
And I want to, today, given those who are here today, ask Ms. Cooper, Ms. Smith, Ms. Desmartu, Mr. Andrews to serve in the nominating committee. And we need a recommendation from the nominating committee to move along with our officer elections in November. So if the nominating committee could make sure you've gotten together before we meet again next month, then we'll move forward with our officer elections.
Doesn't it have to be in December?
Well, technically, it's supposed to be in December, and I think Rick and I talked about this, but if you wanted to move it up to November, I guess you can.
Yeah, we didn't vote on
Or
this.
just-
I've slept since then. It seems like we needed a vote, though.
I thought we presented it at one meeting.
In November,
voted on it
voted
next.
next.
Okay, maybe that's
Is that
what we
right?
did. I guess you presented in November and then vote on it in December.
December.
I guess that's what we.
Yeah.
Last year.
And there's
last-
irony in me saying all this because I
You were
already know
aware of
that,
that.
I already know that I cannot be here at the December meeting, but I believe the bylaws actually said you actually voted in December, so I won't be here for the vote.
Okay.
So, but that's just for the clarification.
Unless we change our bylaws between now and then.
I know we
I
did.
think maybe the only way you could do it in November is unanimous and vote to move it to November or
Right.
something.
We
but-
didn't vote in December last
Alan,
year.
you're on that committee, and I need.
No, I'm not.
On the, bylaws committee.
Oh, well, we just need to do that before,
Right.
because I will not be here for the December.
Right,
meeting.
we need to meet this month.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Did we not vote in November?
You actually voted in November
Yes,
last year.
I thought so.
And
We
in my
didn't
conver-
have a December.
But, yeah, we had a December meeting, but we just decided to do it early in November, and you just kind of made the comment,
There was
well,
a
technically, the
reason.
bylaw says it's supposed to be in December. But I thought in our conversation, you said that if they wanted to make a motion to move it up, they could.
We did
I think you
move-
have the latitude
That's what
to
I
do
said.
it.
I'll look at that again.
We'll
just
look
to
again and make
verify.
certain before we put it on the agenda that it's, okay.
Well, what we'll do is, we'll just receive a report from the nominating committee in November and expect to vote in December.
Okay, okay, all right. That'll be fine.
All right,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Good.
No, no, no. I thought, no, I didn't hear no.
So, any other board comments? Mr. Young, Ms. Smith, Ms. Damon too,
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Cooper,
Good.
Mr. Andrews,
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Mr. Joseph.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Hey.
Now, who's the nominating committee?